think we're live.
Yes, we are.
How are you?
I am great.
Well, you look fantastic. I love your background.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I try to start some of these with just a little brief intro, even though I know you. If you wouldn't mind to tell our audience a little bit about yourself and how we know each other, and then we'll get into some fun conversations.
Absolutely. So I'm Neo Queiro, and I have been in the healthcare industry over 30 years, revenue cycle being my anchor. Started out as an RHIA and then went to the dark side of revenue cycle with Deloitte and continued my journey. And Sarah and I used to work at Ensemble together.
Yeah,
That's where we
yeah.
met.
That's where we
Um,
met.
yeah, back in the
A-
day.
And we would just recently were on a panel about AI together. Thank you again for
Yes.
inviting me. You are a wonderful facilitator. Sometimes those panels are hard, and I thought you did a great job of getting everyone heard, but it wasn't like pass the mic, pass the mic, pass the mic, which I think sometimes gets boring. So I thought you did a great job.
Well, thank you. And
Yeah.
having a wonderful group of guests really helped, and you really provided our audience some great insights.
Well,
I was
thank
so
you.
happy you were there, representing strong, uh, and it was wonderful.
Awesome.
Um, Other things about me is that I am a published author, and I have one bestseller and another award-winning book, Joy Notes, Balancing the Trauma Through Triumph. Kind of behind me, it says Joy Notes.
Yes.
And, I have really gone on this desire to help with leadership and help with leadership in these times that we are in a midst of chaos and we need to ground ourselves and start innovating. But you can't innovate if you're stuck living in your past. So the whole idea is to work with everyone and let them know that they have the tools in them to create and show them how to do it. So I'm
That's
having a lot
wonderful.
of fun with that part of my business too.
Well, I follow you on LinkedIn, and I love your joy notes. You post every day, I think.
Every day.
Every day you post something, and they're always insightful. And I get one of the questions that I have for you is I would struggle with having, well, first of all, I wouldn't have ever have that much meaningful content to say. Like the thought that you come up with all that you have enough discipline and enough to share, and it's all so inspiring. Can you maybe talk a little bit about how you come up with all that, or what influences you to create all that content every day?
So the content really comes from my morning routine. Um, I do 50 minutes of a standard routine every morning, no matter what. And 20 minutes of that is reading, and 20 minutes is meditating, prayer, depending, how I split it up. And then the rest is 10 minutes of cardio or, how much I want to dedicate to my workout. It's usually more than 10 minutes, but you know what I mean. But
Yep.
50 minutes, the 10 minutes is jumpstart the workout, but it's 50 minutes of discipline. And from that, believe it or not, that's where the joy notes come from. And I pray to my higher power that I help one person with that joy note for the day. And it just literally evolves from reading and seeing where people are struggling. And, sometimes I do share a personal story, but I really want it to be about everyone else. I don't want it to be about me. And I love doing it. And I've done it in the weirdest places. I mean, I've actually been admitted in the hospital, and I wake up and I'm doing my meditation and everything, and I've had a doctor come in and he says, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I have to do my joy notes. You have to come back later." And so I've done it sailing. I've done it everywhere, and it's a discipline that grounds me as a human being. And I am so happy to share it. And when I get DMs saying you have no idea how this helped, I know that it serves the
Yeah.
purpose, and the purpose is not me. It's
Yeah.
really helping.
It's really fantastic. And I know that there have been days that I read your content and I feel heard, even though you and I are not talking about it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm like,
Yep.
oh, I've had that experience or something of that nature. And the way that you put the content together, the reader just feels like, oh, Neo gets it. Like she's had this same experience. So it helps by even just helping someone feel like they're heard. Cause a lot of times we go through life and we don't feel that way. So, I just want to say thank you. I'm sure you've got lots of people that give you a lot of positive feedback because it's so great. But just thank you for just the discipline. I would like to talk a little bit more about discipline. Can we do that for a second?
Absolutely.
So it's something that I have been on my own journey about, and the importance of discipline in just your general life, how you show up in life, both personally and professionally. Has discipline been something that you've always had, and this is kind of the new version of it? Did you go on a journey to kind of establish discipline? Can you maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I learned discipline from my parents. Um, the expectations when we were children were very succinct, and we were all either in sports, we were in music. They wanted to give us the knowledge that it's not because I want to, it's because I must. If I want to get better, if I want to be the best, I must. And that means you do it when it's raining. You do it when your tummy aches. And I'm a musician. That's where joy notes came from and why music is so important to me. And I use music to get through rough times and to get through those feelings of chaos. So behind me, what you don't see is a keyboard. And even in my office, if I'm having a rough moment, I'll go to the keyboard and I'll play Bach for about for as long as it takes to get my head out of the game, out of that craziness that I'm going through. So discipline has been about understanding that you cannot get anywhere if you don't do the work. And you
Yeah,
don't do the work when it's uncomfortable. Anybody
that's
can
right.
do the work when it's comfortable.
That's right.
But discipline is about doing the work no matter what. And yeah, I was raised that way.
That's wonderful. And the 20 minutes of reading and 20 minutes of meditation slash prayer, has that been a discipline for you for a long time?
I always meditated, but the reading really started after my major trauma. Then I needed the reading because I needed to go on a journey of learning. And in the beginning, it was learning about who I was and identifying who I was. And then it became curiosity and learning about everything. And now I'm very focused in neuroscience. I'm very focused in understanding innovation, the impact of innovation, and how humans react to it. So I'm doing a lot of really deep thinking on that and learning from other industries on how they've used it, because that's really the way that we become innovators, is to see what someone else is doing in another industry and then adapting it to our industry. So I would say that I have been doing the 50 a good 5 years.
Yeah. And I know that the purpose of your book is to kind of share resilience and triumph through dark times. You use the word trauma. You've heard me talk about the things that I learned, following the death of my first husband. Is there anything about that experience or anything that you'd like to share that you think would be inspiring to anyone that may be listening?
You know, we sometimes throw the word trauma around loosely. And there are challenges that you need in life that will happen in life that are not trauma. But a death, like what you went through, that's trauma. That's when an unexpected thing comes in and basically pulls the rug out from under you. In my case, I had 2 cardiac arrests.
Oh, wow.
I had to, and then when it happened, it debilitated my body to the point that I had mobility issues. I could not eat. I was in a feeding tube. I was in a coma. I mean, my whole life ended. And people think that when you go through trauma, the resiliency on the other side is just that you're healthier, whether it's mentally or physically. But guess what? Most people, when they go to trauma, they want to help everyone else but themselves. They spend their whole time making sure that everybody else is okay, and they put themselves on the shelf. And they act like they're okay, but they never deal with themselves. And I really want to help people understand that you have to heal first, because then you can be complete and you can live your purpose. Otherwise, what you're doing is you're masking.
Yeah.
And if you mask, eventually the stress will hit another trauma point, because the body will let you break down. Your cells will break down if you keep them in a stress mode.
That's
So, yeah.
such valuable insight. And I'm so sorry that you went through that. Any trauma is difficult. But I just commend you for, making good out of it, right? And allowing it to shape you and think about how you can help others, right? I think that's amazing. Let's switch gears if it's okay with you. If I'd like to kind of just keep pulling on that string, because you talked about, it completes you and the concept of whether or not we're healthy. And I'm a big believer that in order for anyone, and I'm going to shift gears professionally here for a second, but for anyone to deliver their best self at work, they have to be a healthy individual. Right? They have to be a healthy individual all the way around. And if there's something going on in their home life, or they're carrying trauma, or, they feel all of this stress, then they're not their best self at work. So how can I'm very focused on that. I believe in that strongly. I work really hard to engage with my team on how can I help you bring your best self to work? What are some things that you think any organization can do to help their leaders or their associates be their best, healthiest self?
I think the number one thing, and it's something that we all think we're good at, but we're really not, and that's listen. Most organizations make assumptions about their employees. But guess what? Most of them don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Like you said, to be a complete person, you have to deal with your personal, your professional, and if that's misaligned, even when you say, "Oh no, I left my personal in the car and I'm present," it doesn't. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. You're carrying that person right into the room, and your reactions are secondary to what's happening in your personal life. So when you start seeing your staff member, your teammate, as a whole person, you see this person every single day, and you notice that today they're a little bit different. Give them the grace. Now, you don't have to say to them, "Oh, what's wrong?" because they're not going to tell you. But give them the little bit of space to regroup.
That's great feedback.
And if there are deadlines, ask the question, okay, this is our deadline. I will need to know, what is your commitment to the deadline? Let them be able to express it, and maybe you spread the work. But if you're listening, if you're present with that individual, it will change your company. I do a lot of strategic work with executives. And when they first come in, they come in rolling their eyes because they think it's going to be like, we're going to go into karma, crap. I don't do that. What I want you to do is I want you to be present and to actually see what's happening in the room. So I teach, how do you read body language? How do you listen to the words that are coming out of the person's mouth and understand if maybe they're saying what you want to hear and maybe they're editing. And how do you work with that person 100% so that you understand what they want to contribute, what their vision is for their job? That's another thing. Sometimes we have people in the wrong role because they didn't understand that that's the job they took, not the job they wanted. And if you find out, you can actually put them in the right role and get 10 times more out of them. I had an individual that joined my organization, and he thought that being, it was a denials position, that being head of denials was going to mean that he was going to be deep into analysis. And it wasn't. It was managing people. And
Right.
it wasn't his thing. You know, we were a few weeks in, and I noticed he was struggling. And I said, could you do me a favor? Could you define what this role would magically be if you designed the role? And everything he was talking about was analysis. It was nothing about engaging with people. And we recreated, he moved into a different role that he was very focused on the analysis. He was the analysis czar. And we had another person that was a lower person under him that actually was a real good people person. And we shifted the roles, and she took over that position. And we got two incredible people working that yielded in amazing results. So that anybody else would have said, oh, just fire him. No,
Right.
you don't need to waste that money because that's really expensive. You got to listen. You got to understand. And we have to now be creative and curious about our new roles because with technology the way it is, the roles are going to be consistently changing. So take advantage of their own insights of the way they see your business progressing and keep them educated, keep them curious, and you will have an incredible workforce.
How do you think that collaboration and innovation will evolve with all of the technological advances? We're all remote. A lot of us are remote, work now, which changes things. We've got, a lot of technology at our fingertips that generates things for us. They solve simpler problems, right? Computers can solve simpler problems, left to us to solve more complex ones. What, maybe said differently, what advice do you have for someone to make sure that they stay current and they skill build to make sure that they can still collaborate and innovate as we go down this path of technology?
It's interesting that as much as technology is bringing to our table, one thing that it's actually really letting us know is the human connection is the power of technology. So what I mean by that is you want a use case to be successful, then you must make sure that everybody has oneness as to what defines that use case because you need critical thinking. You need to be forever thinking ahead, which means we need change management and we need change in our thinking. As far as we're not using technology, well, you know what we're using technology as the way we're comfortable. We're not daring with technology yet. I have a project that I'm doing, which I am really stoked about, and it's helping this organization with their training and education. It's not training, it's actually education of their teams. And what we're doing is not only have we set up how we use the system, that was the easy one. That took 5 minutes. But what we expect from the system and what we expect from outcomes and how our people are behaving. So we're monitoring their behavior and giving them clues. Oh, you forgot this. And if you need a tutorial, here is the video that goes with it. But at the same time, we're gathering all that information and we're seeing where our gaps are. And now we're sitting together, even with the staff, and coming up with what do we want to do beyond what we got here? How do we fix? But what do we want to do beyond? And we're actually making the generative AI and the AI agents do greater thinking of solutioning and giving us options for us to actually keep that workforce. So one of the things that happened with the denial management, we found out that the staff did not know how to really talk to the chat GPT,
Ah, okay.
right? So what we do, we did a course to train them how to ask the questions so that they could get valid results from the chat GPT. So that's what you have to do. You have to continuously get uncomfortable and sit down and figure out where your gaps are and keep training your people.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing. Look, we got so comfortable with, I know how to do this. I'm the best at denial management. I'm the best at billing. I'm the best at follow up. We are no longer the best. We're continuously in progress and evolving. And if we can keep ourselves in that curious mind and continuously be, figuring things out, because the payer is making changes, we need to make changes. And on top of that, we need to, as technology changes, make sure your staff understands the new technology and is schooled on it. The beauty of the online courses, they're about an hour. It's an hour that you should give your staff because it's going to pay off.
Yeah.
And that should be part of our standard work. Every staff member should be taking a small course once a month
Yep.
and be learning.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that on our panel about just how revenue cycle has evolved, right? Just since you and I have been in it, we've been in it a long time, and how you have to, good revenue cycle people are constantly learning and developing. I am curious because I know how much you love the revenue cycle. Us revenue cycle nerds, it gets in our blood, and then we just love it. If you were to have all the rev cycle people in the country in a room and you got up on stage and you had, could teach them something and give them a key takeaway, what would it be in relation to kind of the way that you see rev cycle trending?
Stop the nonsense of hating the payer.
Oh,
It does not serve you well.
speaking right to my heart right there, Neo.
You know what? We got to stop this nonsense. We have been talking about the same things for over 30 years.
Yep.
I don't know about you, but if I go to one more denial management session,
Yep.
It, stop it. Stop it. How about figuring out your contracts? How about taking your contracts before you bill out, run your claims against your contracts, and lower the amount of denials you're going to get?
Yep.
How about thinking out of the box and instead of being victims, be proactive and use the technology? Yeah, you're going to be uncomfortable because you're going to be doing new things you've never done before, but it's about time.
Yeah.
We have to change.
We do, and obviously that's what we're about at Trend, and I love that that's your answer. I promise I didn't pay you to say that, but it's true, and I came, I've talked about this openly. I just believed in this adversarial model for so long, and then I got to know the payers, and I really understood that a lot of, you called it nonsense, and I think that's the right word, a lot of the nonsense has been created by bad actors on both sides. So
Absolutely.
providers are really good at, throwing the stones at payers without any real acknowledgement that payers created these policies because people were gaming the system, right? Like they had to catch the bad actors. And, anyway, all that to say, if we could all recognize that we're here to serve patients, we're here to deliver good care, we're here to be reimbursed fairly for that care, and payers want to make sure that they are reimbursing for medically necessary care for that patient. Like if you could let's just start there. and then move from there. I think it would just change the way that we interact so much, and would just innately reduce waste.
Totally agree. Totally agree. And we have to start these conversations. We need to go to the table, not a JOC, a real
Right.
conversation,
That's
and
right.
start looking at your contract and say, and the other thing is stop walking into the room in mistrust. Walk into the room curious and ready to negotiate something that's going to be a win for both sides. Because if you think it's going to be all about your side, you're not coming into a negotiation then.
That's right.
You
That's
know?
right. Well, you end up right fighting, right?
Yeah.
Instead of listening, which is back to your original point that that's a missing skill where
Yep.
we're not listening. We're not engaging with each other to listen to understand. We're just waiting for our turn to speak so often, right?
Yeah, I was in Washington recently, and I was speaking regarding interoperability and just a lot of information with some payers. And they were talking about we can't get any providers to test with us. And I actually, I was ready to say, no, that's not true. You can get, and then I started really thinking about it. And the level of mistrust that providers have to give a payer access is major. And I said, well, what about, Epic? They have their payer portal, and they're like, well, we're payers. We're not going to pay Epic to give us what we should be doing with our providers that we're contracted with directly. Why would we pay Epic? And they were right. And I started thinking about it, I'm like, man, we really are missing the boat here. We need to get in a room together and we need to figure this out. And I'm more concerned about the little hospital. Yes, I am the person that I care about community, rural, and all of those little places because they serve most of the population of America. Not everybody's an IDN, and not everybody's a huge health system. Most care is done in rural America, and they don't have the money, and they don't get the voice. So we have to somehow create a fair playing field between the payers and these little bitty places that don't have the revenue to cause interest. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, how do you think we can start having those conversations? So we at Trend, we're trying to just focus on our 20 square feet. I tell people that all the time. We try to bring payers and providers together regularly to try to have those conversations. What else can we do as revenue cycle leaders, as thought leaders in this space to help improve the way that we're communicating about healthcare?
In a different time, I would have said we should be working with our state legislature and have them create a level playing field so we could come and it could be a safe place with an intermediary, with a third party, keeping it safe for both of us. That would have been perfect. But we are in chaos right now. We don't know what healthcare is going to be from day to day. There are too many missing pieces right now. However, not a bad idea to see if we can get some hospitals together through the hospital association and use them as a means to pull the top payers, maybe the top 5 payers within a state, and start the conversation. I do believe it has to be a third party that creates a safe place.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that.
And it also gives an opportunity for you to have the big IDNs and the small little hospitals all in at the same table.
Yeah.
So I think we need to go and do that. I was hoping that HFMA was going to go in that direction, but they just haven't have that forward thinking. So that's why I said the hospital association, because they seem to be very keen in their interaction with the payers. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think that maybe that's the way we're going to have to pivot somehow.
Yeah, and I think class is trying to do a lot of that in their K2 summit with the
Yes,
payer
that's true.
provider, yeah, collaboration summit. But it's a couple of days and it's jam packed. I went last year and there's some really
Yeah, I was
great,
there.
yeah, yeah, really great topics, really great case studies. We just need more of that. And I think as people that come to that conference that have the sense of, I'm going to do what I can in my 20 square feet and take that back to their respective organizations. I'm hopeful that that spreads, right? Like that attitude spreads.
Yeah, but it is a closed meeting. I mean, it's
It
an
is.
invitation only meeting. And that's why I want it to be something like the hospital association that all the hospitals are participants in. And it
Yeah.
opens, the door for anyone to show up for that. So yeah, that's the only thing. I love that class is doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. But we have to stop. This is our industrial age. We are in the midst of the biggest change in healthcare, in basically in an innovation. So we have to create a new way of doing things and get uncomfortable and embrace uncomfortable.
And how, I know you're going to have thoughts on this, so I'm going to ask it. How can an organization, or what are some suggested activities, maybe let's be specific, what are some suggested activities that an organization can do to foster the kind of culture that drives that level of innovation, right? Because that's that kind of, you likened it to the industrial age. I mean, we're going to have to make massive jumps, right, to stay relevant in our products, in our services. How do we as organizations create that culture that we're fostering all of that collaboration, all that innovation from the ground up, right? Those ideas aren't going to come from me, right? They're going to come from the people that are in it every day, that are seeing all the opportunities for, for waste and all that kind of stuff. How do we do that as leaders of organizations?
We already got a blueprint. We did it in 2020. You see, the thing about it is, if we pull out and dust off what we did in 2020, we have the foundation for what we have to do today. Okay? So in 2020, nobody cared if you were a LPN or if you were a physician or if you were a patient access clerk. We were all in a room together solutioning on how we were going to provide the service most efficiently to the population. And everybody contributed, and every voice was heard. And for the first time, we embraced the dependencies instead of fight in silos against each other. So we have a blueprint. But what we have to do is we need to get back into those rooms, get back into that format of communication, because our viability depends on it. And the reason it all happened so beautifully is because we had a common objective, common goal, and a oneness. So we need to get our organizations in that mentality of the way that we're going to keep our hospital alive, our professional groups alive, is if we work together. And we have to identify our goals, write them down, and then attack them just like we did in 2020. You remember all those meetings.
I do. I love it. That's exactly right. And I remember thinking at the time in like 2021, I remember I was sitting on a panel actually at HFMA, and one of the things that occurred to me was we need to keep that momentum going, right? So have you seen organizations that have done a good job of keeping that momentum going, or are you seeing people just kind of snap back to old ways of thinking?
Unfortunately, most organizations have snapped back. But there are a few that are daring. I spent some time just recently at MedStar, and I was blown away of how they get it. They have invested in their population health beyond what was required. And the reason they did it is because they understood that in the new models that will come, and by the way, the models will come. We are not going to be the same models that we have today. DRG is going to change. Fee for service is going to change. Value based is going to expand. We're going to do more on merit based work. They understood that they needed to eliminate the healthcare illiteracy within their community so that they could have healthier people and people that were engaged in their own care. So they have done all these incredible programs to go out there and create not only stickiness, but create trust in their communities. And that's what's going to take. We need to go back and become partners of our communities that we serve. Because,
I love that.
yeah, that's the only
love
way.
that.
Look, let's just look at the ages that are happening. We have boomers and we have Gen X. We're most of the population. We're aging. We have to have a plan for this
Whether we
aging
like it or
population.
not.
Yeah, whether we like it or not, we're aging. So if you don't have a plan for the population at large, and there are going to be cuts to Medicare and Medicaid, you better keep those people healthy so that your revenue and your reimbursement looks good. Because because if your outcomes are really bad, you're going to get less money. So you got to plan ahead. So I'm looking at organizations like MedStar is one, Duke is another one. There's several that have said, aha, I got to start moving in the direction of creating my ecosystem to be working and pivoting as healthcare changes.
Yeah, that's so great. And I just realized that we only have 10 minutes left, and I could talk to you for days. So I've put you on the hot seat. I've asked you a bunch of questions. Is there any questions that you would like to ask or any thoughts that you would just like to share with anyone that may be listening today?
So I do want to ask you,
Okay.
what are the payers currently saying about us?
Yeah, they feel the sentiment is often, and I don't, it's not negative. So first of all, I would say they are very concerned about provider abrasion. We don't have a payer client that isn't concerned about provider abrasion. I don't know of any provider that is worried about payer abrasion. So that is, first and foremost is they are very concerned about their relationship with their providers, and they think about it a lot, and it filters down into even at the individual claim level. Like, if we do this with this claim, what is the impact to provider abrasion? So I think that is something that when I was on the provider side, you probably would never have convinced me that was true.
Yeah.
Never would have convinced me that was true.
Yep.
But I live it every day, and I can attest to that. That's my experience. I think that in many cases, they believe that providers don't do the work to get claims, to your point in the very beginning, to get claims accurate and out the door and understand payer policy. And I think they have examples of giving providers information to make those changes, and they just don't get done. So I think that may be the case in some providers where, listen, we've all had, when you and I both have been in revenue cycle seats where the laundry list of things that needs to get accomplished is impossible to get across the finish line. And so it's very difficult to prioritize. I can see how that would happen, so to speak, right? I can see how that could be the case, even with providers that want to make those changes. I do think that there are still a lot of providers that if a payer says it, it must not be true, because there's just so much distrust. So, I think they would love to have better and more collaborative communication and solutioning sessions with their providers.
I totally agree with you. And I also believe that providers have spent a great deal of money on task oriented uses of innovation. We all have bots. We all have bots, but what are the bots doing what they really need to be doing? We haven't really measured the efficiency of the bots, and we keep installing them as it was back in the day when you installed the system and you put it in and you walked away. A bot needs constant reinforcement
Constant.
and constant change.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would say to providers is you need to understand the policies and you need to gather the policy information and work towards meeting the policy information so that you can have a better contract
Yeah.
outcome. And I don't think that we are investing enough in that type of work at this time. We are just in reactive mode, and we really need to get strategic in revenue cycle. It's a different
Agreed.
game. We are no longer transactional. This is about using information, and I won't say data because it's more than just the claim. It's everything that surrounds the claim. We need to use it to forecast, to project, to actually make sure that we put out a much better product to those
Yeah.
payers. And we need a relationship with the payers.
Yeah.
We got to stop it.
Yeah, I mean, we like to say we're drowning in data and starving for insights,
Yeah.
right? We have so much data, but our ability to take all that data into something meaningful, something actionable we're just not making the progress, to your point, that I would love to see. And honestly, when you coming back to the payer provider dynamic, we can't even get them on one side, the payer and the provider, very often we have a hard time getting them to agree just to the same set of data. Is that data set correct? We just fight over whose spreadsheet is right, And so if you spend all your time fighting over whose spreadsheet is right, you can't actually fix the thing that's on the spreadsheet. Even if it's 95% right, or 80% right, let's just fix that. Anyway, I could go on and on, but I am hopeful, and I am working as so many people at Trend are working tirelessly to try to encourage people to rise above the fray and think about something bigger, and think about patients, think about, the expense that we have in U.S. healthcare in a way that is, to your point, unsustainable. And we've got to do what we can do in our 20 square feet.
Right. And I totally agree with you. I think that there is a lot more out there than what we give ourselves credit for that is possible. And I'm very optimistic that we are going to rise.
I love it.
And I know it because we've been through it all. And, this is just coming full circle for when we were in 1986 when we first heard those beautiful words, DRG.
Oh, that's such a great way to end this episode, Neo. Before we let you go, I know that you are out and about, you're speaking, you're doing book signings. There's so much going on with you. If people want more Neo, where can they get it?
Well, you could definitely go to Queiro, NIOQUEIRO.com. And there's a great plethora of information there, everything from articles and different events that are coming down the road. Also, please join my podcast, which is Joy and Gratitude. And it is really a place that we get to unravel the chaos.
I love it.
And if you like the blog that happens every day in LinkedIn, this is next level of it. And it's raw and unapologetic. It's just authentic and a lot of fun. And My co-host is amazing. She just comes with a punch of power. So you would have a great time. You can listen to it. We're on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcast. Joy and Gratitude. Please join us. neilcairo.com. Always go to my LinkedIn page. You will have fun. It's that day that you're just saying, I need something to brighten me up. It's always there.
Well, I am so happy for you that you have found your purpose, you have found your joy, and that you're spreading that to anyone that will listen. It's just an amazing thing that you're doing, and keep up the good work. And I can't wait to chat with you again.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me,
Thank
Sarah.
you so much, Neo. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.